Hello, welcome to Stephanie's Threads. I am Stephanie. I created this channel to share my love of handmade textiles, my knitting, my crochet, my sewing, and other handwork. I'd like to let you know you can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as Stephanie's Threads. If you enjoyed this content, I hope that you will consider hitting the like button, the subscribe button, and share with other people who may enjoy this. I also hope that you leave me any comment that you would like to share with me your love of textiles, your love of knitting, or anything, how you enjoy crafting in your own world. I so appreciate that interaction, and I love to hear how craft is a part of people's lives. Today, I want to speak to you about a very practical topic, knitting needle organization. I am a very organized person. I like to have everything in its place and a place for everything. When I started knitting and crochet and all of the other handwork, I suddenly found myself falling under a pile of needles and hooks and yarn and material, and I really needed to fashion a way to organize things so that I could find what I wanted when I wanted it, and also know what I had so I didn't overbuy. As I've shared before, I live in a very, very small town in western Colorado. I am not a big online shopper, I would say, with the exception of sometimes I have to buy yarn online because it's the only place I can get it, it's the only place I have access to it. But for the most part, I'm pretty frugal, and I appreciate using what I have, being creative, and finding solutions that meet my needs, but that do not cost me any money. Let us be honest, if I'm going to spend money, I'm going to spend money on yarn or fabric, the things that not where to put them. I don't want to spend money on that. So that is what I want to speak to you about today. I have some really practical solutions that I employ, and I hope will be some things that you can take away from to understand that if you want to, you can actually create very workable, functional solutions to storage that they work, they just work. So what I want to start with is to share with you that because I'm a very organized person, I do adhere to several strategies for organizing. So I'm going to run through those first. I do want to let you know I created a downloadable PDF, which you can find in the show notes under this video so that you can download it and print it off and hopefully use it to tackle any organizing in your world. I do want to let you know I come from a family, many members of whom like their stuff. They don't like to get rid of things. So I went in the opposite direction, and I'm not I don't have a lot of stuff. I like to keep things quite minimal. So that's a little bit of where some of these thoughts come from. But I have 4 tips for tackling organization. The first one is, what is it that I am trying to achieve? What is my end goal? Is it an aesthetic need? Is it a practical need? Some people refer to this as function over form. That's the first thing. The second thing is, where do I need it and how frequently do I use it? So as an example, I have my studio and I also have my home, and I knit in both places. So I had to consider where I need to keep things, where I have the most space, and how frequently do I use those things. So as an example, do I have a central repository from which I then extract things and use them? Or do I use my things daily? So I do consider where I use it and the frequency of use. The third thing is any constraints that I might have. So especially with craft supplies, do you have children? Do you have pets? Do you have issues with moisture, dryness? Do you have issues with insects? As knitters, we have to be very concerned about our little friends, the moths, because we don't want them to eat our precious inventory. Do you have wood stoves? How, all of these kinds of things that you have to think about, because you want to be sure that you consider those when you are tackling how to approach your organization. And of course, budget. Then the fourth thing is, what do I have? What do I have that I can use? I'm a big reduce, reuse, recycle girl. So I want to employ anything that I have. I can say that purchasing for me is a last resort, or it's something that I ask for in terms of a gift or a treat. But it's not something that I am not a splurger type purchaser. I'm very considered about any purchases that I make. So with those 4 ideas in mind, I'm going to walk you through my Thrifty needle organization. So the first thing I shared with you is, what am I trying to achieve? Is this a practical need for me, or is this a functional need for me? And what I can tell you is, for me, I need to have both. So in terms of my knitting needle storage, I needed to create places where I have inexpensive, accessible, functional, dry, covered, or enclosed knitting needle organization. So for myself, I did not want to have knitting needles hanging out in the open space. There are some people who use, especially for circular needles, they use a hanger that has places where you can insert the circular needles, and then they can just access them. They can hang it on the back of a door, on the back of a closet, and then they can just grab them. I did not want that. I have cats. Cats would think that's like a toy for them. And also I wanted mine to be covered because I live in a dusty environment, and I didn't want to have my needles out exposed into dust. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I wanted to have functional more than form. So for myself, although I want to use things that are attractive, I care more about the practicality of their usefulness, their accessibility. That's my first strategy. The second one is, I examined how frequently do I use my needles, and where do I have them? I have 2 places in my home where I knit: my studio and my home environment. So as I started accumulating more and more needles, what I realized is I wanted to have them in a place where I had a repository of my needles. This also was very important, and I learned this lesson early. When you have needles that are distributed out to project bags, you may say, oh, I don't have a size 2 needle in a 16-inch. However, you forgot that you have a little project bag where you're knitting a hat on your 2 size 2 16-inch circulars. So it became very important to me to remember and to be able to know, oh, I already have those needles. I'm not going to buy another set. So that was very important to me, to create a repository from which I would take needles as I needed them and put them out into different project bags. But I wouldn't be purchasing needles just for the sake of purchasing. When I had them, if they were in use, I needed to wait until I was done with them, or if it was an emergency, I could put that project on waste yarn and then use those needles. So this was super, super important to me, to recognize that I needed to know what I had, and I needed to be able to keep that central place. So I would not do well with not being able to find something that would make me literally a little crazy. So it's not a solution that worked for me. The other thing is that so let's just start talking about needles themselves. When we're dealing with knitting needles, people typically tend to have straight needles, fixed circulars, and DPNs. Additionally, the knitting world, of course, also now has interchangeable circulars. So I have all of them. I'm not gonna lie. I use them for different things, and I wanted to have storage solutions for each of those different types of needles. And I'm gonna start showing you how I addressed each of those, but I wanna get through these 4 points first when it comes to my needles. The constraints I had obviously were budget, and I wanted to be sure that I didn't have a lot of space. I don't want to have bins and buckets and boxes full of needles. I want them contained. And I chose to have mine always be enclosed. So I want mine to be dry. I don't want them to be attacked by cats, and I want them to be in a close space. Then the next point that I wanted to consider is if I had any, what did I have? So now let's start, what do I have that I could use for storage? So let's start talking about how I actually organize my needles. I'm gonna start with what I first acquired, which are my straight needles. I chose to use a knitting needle case that I sewed. I got this, it's not a recipe, pattern from, I'm going to show you, this book decades ago called Stitch and Bitch. She has a couple terrific patterns in here. And remember, this was before YouTube. This is before a lot of online resources. So I was sort of like, do they have anything at the fabric store, like a pattern that I could buy? And because I had got the Stitch and Bitch book, when I saw that she has a needle case, I said, well, shoot, I can sew that. So, and I mentioned my friend Megan in my first episode. We sewed this at the same time years ago. So this is my knitting needle case for straight DPNs that I have had. I've had this for at least 20, maybe 25 years. So it's tied with a little ribbon, and I'm going to do my best to show this to you. You unroll it, so it's a knitting needle roll. You can see that one flap, this one, covers the actual needles, so it keeps it nice and clean. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip that back so that you can see, voila, there are my straight needles. And what you can also see is, there are channels, right? This is a super easy project to sew if you sew, or if you have someone in your life that sews. And you create these little channels into which each set of needles is insert. There are some people who got super fancy and they have embroidery machines and they'll put like the size of the needles in there. I felt like I didn't need to do that because the majority of your straight needles, I'll show you, have a size right on them. They have the English size and the metric size. So from my point of view, I didn't need to worry about that, but I do love to know that all of my needles are secure in here and I can pop them in knowing that I can access them whenever I need to. So that's the first thing that I sewed to create what at that time, because I was doing lots of scarves and blankets, you know, introductory type knitting projects. That is my knitting needle roll that, again, I've had for decades and works perfectly for me. The next thing I started to acquire because I moved into socks. So I learned how to make socks, which I'll talk about at a different time, using DPNs. For those of you that don't know, DPNs are double point needles. And what started to happen is I got a very simple set of double point needles that I'm pretty sure I got these from Knit Picks. And these are the small sock needles. So your size 1 or your, very small needles up to size 3. And once I had that, I liked it. But what I was finding is I was knitting socks and I didn't want to keep coming back to this because the sock bags that I use were smaller. So I did explore how can I take just one set of DPNs and take them from project to project. And I actually found these. I'm going to tell you the first thing I tried were toothbrush holders from the dollar store. The problem with toothbrush holders, for those of you that don't know, is they have little holes at the bottom, which are intended to allow water to drip out. And pretty soon my needles were falling out. So even though I tried duct tape, I tried all that stuff, I was like, this is not working. So I was actually at a craft show, and one of the ladies there was selling these little tubes. And what happens is they pop out. You pop your needle, your DPNs in there, super secure, dry as a bone. And what I will do is, if I'm working on socks, I will take one of these. I think I bought four. And I can just take these and place them in my different project bags. And then I know my DPNs are always secure. When I did get those DPNs, I did end up having to get one tool, which I'm sure many of you have, which is a needle gauge. This is my favorite one. It's from Ancient Arts Yarns. I got this when I had bought a skein of yarn from them to make socks. But what you can do is, you see that you can put your, I'll show you in case you don't know. You can take your needle and you insert it into the various holes, and basically you're looking for the hole that fits it perfectly. So in this case, this is a, can't see, this is a size 3.25 millimeter needle. And that way, if you do lose track of which needle you're using, you can use your gauge to redetermine. So I keep this in my central repository of DPNs, so that if I ever lose track of my DPN size, I can quickly access this and put it in the right place. The other thing I did go ahead and get is also from Knit Picks. This is a wonderful enclosed, zippered, so it's got a double zip. I did not make this case, and it was not expensive. I think I got it on one of their annual sales. And what you see is you have your DPNs here. And so this one goes here. There's different channels in there that you can see. And also it has a zip on this side. This is not sponsored video. I'm just sharing what I have. But what I do is I pop my needle gauge right in here. So when I am storing my DPNs for socks, in this case, I take my original set and I take my metal set. The ones in the, these are plastic, I'm sorry, these are wooden and these are metal. I go back and forth. When it comes to socks, I do not have a preference for wooden or metal needles. I like to just use whatever feels good with the yarn. But this is, you can see, extremely compact, very inexpensive. And I have had this for, I think I got this in 2014. So it's lasted fine. I keep this right with my straight needles, and I know that I have access to them easily, along with my little tubes for when I need to access them. Now, the next thing I had to tackle is I started making hats. And if you're a hat knitter, before the time of interchangeable circulars, you got fixed circulars. And I started to get a big pile of fixed circular needles along with DPNs to align with those, because when you're knitting the crown of a hat, sometimes a 16-inch circular is too big. So you have to go down to a DPN to do your crown decreases or your last few rounds of stitching. Well, this became a problem for me because I had like a bag and it was very hard to find the sizes. And so I thought, okay, what do I have? Because that's my technique. And I had a photo box. So what I did is I took, this is a photo box that I wasn't using for photos. I took this and I said, fine, I will begin compiling my fixed circulars and my DPNs in here. And then what happened, I'm going to show this to you so you can see I have quite a collection. But what started happening is there were too many for me to easily find, even though I was keeping them in order. So when I get my wet cat food boxes, there are little cardboard separators level by level. I took them and I cut them to fit the size of the box. I wrote the number, the size of the needle on here, and I used those as dividers. So when I tell you I'm frugal, I'm not joking. I use anything that I have so I don't have to purchase. So this box, I'm just going to pull out one section. I'll pull out my size 5s so that I can show you. In my size 5 section, I will show you my stash. The other thing I elected to do, and I know not everybody does this, but I elected to keep the original material that the needles came in. So let me show you what I mean. This is a size 5 set of DPNs, and I kept the original packaging because it has the size of the needle, it has the length of the needle, and it's convenient. So I found, here's a set of chow goos. These are 24-inch, size 5, or 3.75 millimeter. Again, kept the original packaging. When I am setting up a project bag, which I will do in a short video maybe, I identify the needles that I need. So as an example, if you're knitting a hat, typically you'll need your circulars and you'll need your DPNs for the decreases. All of this goes into that project bag. So I know that in that bag, I have my size 5 24-inch and I have my size 5 DPNs, or again, 3.75 millimeter. So that way, I'm not looking around for where things are. This stays right in the project bag. When I'm done with it, it goes back into my central repository. The other thing that's very useful is, let's talk about a sweater. So for a sweater, you often need to have your circulars in 3 different sizes. You need the 16 to cast on if it's a top-down sweater. You need your 24-inch and then sometimes even 32-inch. So I have all those right in my size 5 slot. I can pull them out and pop them into my project bag, and I'm not wondering before I start a project if I'm lacking a needle. At this point, I'm not lacking too many needles, but you understand my point. So that is what's in my size 5 slot. Again, my choice, photo box separated by cardboard separators with the number written on it, original packaging, which allows me to pop in and get whatever I need. I can make choices about wooden, metal, pointed, not pointed, all that sort of thing. That way too, if I'm ever in a situation where I'm tackling a project and I say, oh, these are the needles that I need, which hopefully most of you know when you are looking at a pattern, they give you enough information so that you know the type of yarn you need, the needles that you need, and really what the question is just, do you meet their gauge or not? So this contains my size 1 through size 10 and a half actually needles. And this box is my central repository that lives in my storage place in the house, and I can go and get those when I need them. I do want to show you, because those of us that knit chunky knit things, I gotta grab this, I did end up also getting gigantic needles, and guess what? When I bought some yarn once, I got this very large plastic bag, and my very large needles, so my 11s, my 13s, 15s, 17s, etc., go in here. I do have separators in these are my 11s, and these I chose to put inside a different plastic bag. I don't use these needles a ton, so it does not bother me to have them in a plastic bag. Aesthetically, this choice for me, function over form all day. So that's my larger needles. And again, this lives with the same place, but just a different, I'm much more, what I'm trying to say is I'm in this box far more than I am in that plastic bag, but they're both in the same place. So I can find things very easily. The next thing that happened in my knitting world is interchangeable circulars came into my life. So I did, as a gift, receive these needles. These are from size, let me check. I'm pretty sure it's size 4. Yeah, these are size 4 up to size, I want to say 10. And it comes with the cords. Let me show you that. Comes with the cords and the tighteners as well. So this is a very nice set of very functional needles. I did choose, these are Knitter's Pride Zing needles is what they're called. I did also get some additional, what's the word? Tips, yes, in the sizes I used most commonly. So as an example, I use size 7 needles a lot and size 8 needles a lot. So I did go ahead and purchase additional tips. And I also went ahead and purchased some additional cables. So the needles themselves were a gift for me, and the additional tips and the cables I went ahead and purchased myself because I was finding that I couldn't use all my different circulars because I didn't have a tip I needed or something to that effect. So this set of needles, along with, I'm going to show you 2 more, lives here in my studio because often when I'm pulling together a project bag, if I need interchangeables, I want to pull them from here. So my fixed circulars live in the house, my interchangeables live here in my studio. I was also gifted, which was really such a lovely, lovely gift. For those of you that know, you know, ChowGoo interchangeable mini sets. So this set was the first one that I received, and this has the sizes, I'm going to show you, I believe it's size 4, which is a, I don't have my glasses, 3.5 up to size 8, which is a 5.0. So you have 2 sizes. You have your larger size, and let me just show you, same needle size, but longer tip. I use these predominantly for sleeves when I'm knitting sweaters, or yes, predominantly I would say I use them for sleeves. So this is a wonderful set. Again, not sponsored. I'm just showing you what I have. This comes with little cables that you hook onto them, and it also comes with a handy dandy little needle gauge size too. So that's, and again, it comes in this cute little pouch. I chose to keep that pouch, and that is my repository. And from there, I will load up a project bag as I need them. In this situation, these are so small, and I don't really use them a ton, meaning I don't have I told you I'm not a big whip person, so I will often just pop this entire case right into my project bag because I don't need it elsewhere. I was recently gifted, my mom and my stepdad bought me the smaller set, and this, I have to say, I've been using this a lot because of fingering weight sweater sleeves. So this is the same idea, but the size on this is from size 0 or 2.0 millimeter to size 3, 3.25. Again, I don't use these for socks. I do have 9-inch circulars for socks, and I use DPNs for socks. But these, again, I typically tend to use for, I might be doing a hat. The smaller needle size is super handy for me. So I will tend to pop this right into a project bag. Put that back. See, I can't even just leave it on the table. I'm so compelled to put it away tidily. So these are my most recent needles that I had to somehow address storage for. So I do this, I spit when I speak to you, I'm sorry. Okay, so just as a recap, number 1 for me was, what was I trying to achieve? I needed practical, I would say my choice was more function over form when it came to my needle storage. Second thing, where do I use them and how frequently do I use them? I needed 2 different places to keep my needles, one in my home, one in my studio, and I wanted to keep them manageable in terms of size or the space that they took up. I needed to have dry, covered, enclosed storage. The third thing is constraints. Obviously, I made some budget choices, and I made choices because I didn't want them exposed to my pets, and I wanted to know that I could find them when I needed them. What I should have also said is I use my knitting needles every day. So do I use my full repository every day? No. But do I use my crafting, do I knit every day? Pretty much yes. So I needed to have something both as a repository and something I could distribute to my different projects and have that be easy and clean and that I could keep track of so that I didn't all of a sudden have stray needles places and go, where does this go? Where does that go? This does not work for me, which is why I chose to keep the original packaging materials. The third thing was, as I shared, I obviously made some budget choices, and I did at various times in my knitting career prioritize asking for gifts when it came to needles. And of course, I have such wonderful people in my life that they have gifted me beautiful things, and I take really good care of them so that I have them for a long time. And then obviously the fourth thing is what did I have that I could use so that I could make it easy on myself. So that's where I had a book that had a pattern, I had fabric, I made my knitting needle roll as my first thing, and I used, if I get new things, I try to put them in places that I already have them, and I use my little storage box and my little kitty cat food dividers and even a plastic bag to take care of things that are not as things that I go for as much. So I think it is very achievable to create storage that you have that is completely functional, that is inexpensive, and that keeps you very much in order. If you are somebody who wants to get a gift of needle storage, I'm going to leave a couple of resources below because, like everybody, I see what's out there on the market. Delaque has some incredible knitting needle storage cases. I will leave a link. They sell, and they also sell out of Jimmy Bean's Wool, which is in Reno, Nevada. I think one of the biggest makers that's come out in the last few years that people really, you can say it's like a super special treat, is Thread and Maple. They have some stunning knitting needle organization tools. But I will also share with you, I have seen at Michael's, they have, which is a store in the US, I just want to say that. Michael's has a photo storage bin that is a plastic bin. It's pretty compact. It's not as small as a photo storage box, but it's not going to invade your space. Then when you open the lid, there are different little cases that are intended for you to put photos in, but you could very easily put your circular needles in there. See, you can't put DPNs in. So to me, it's only a solution for circulars, which if that's what you use, that's fantastic. So that's an option. I will link that below. And then the other thing that I have seen, which I thought was so clever, and I did try it, is some people take a 3-ring binder, they put sleeves, plastic see-through sleeves in the 3-ring binder, and they're I think they're zippered or like Ziploc type things, and you can put your circulars in there. I tried to use that before I built this stash. Once I got to a certain point, the binder was just unwieldy and I couldn't use it. But if you're somebody who has a moderate amount of circulars or even fixed DPNs, no, DPNs are fixed. If you have fixed circulars or if you have DPNs, you could very easily create a little 3-ring binder and put your your sleeves in there and use that. So there are many, many options for knitting needle storage. Please don't be overwhelmed by it, and please make it so that it's a system for yourself that is convenient for you. Whatever works for you is what is best. If you can use the downloadable PDF that I put in the link below, help yourself. Again, if you can, like, comment, subscribe, tell me about your knitting needle storage. I'd love to know what you use. Until we meet again, I wish you smooth stitches and so much peace.